Tough talk about China from President Biden during the G7 and NATO summits. Biden says he's satisfied with G7 demands regarding China's human rights abuses and economic rule breaking.
The president's next big agenda item is a meeting with Russia's Vladimir Putin tomorrow in Geneva. Here's Biden yesterday from the NATO summit in Brussels talking tough about Russia as well. Watch.
I'm going to make clear to President Putin that there are areas where we can cooperate if he chooses. And if he chooses not to cooperate and acts in a way that he has in the past relative to cybersecurity and some other activities, then we will respond.
Biden also saying he hopes Putin will behave in a manner consistent with, quote, appropriate behavior for a head of state.
We'll bring our panelists in now. Today we have Joe Collins, U.S. Navy veteran and former GOP congressional candidate from California. Kelly Hyman's joining us. She's a Democratic strategist and an attorney. And Rich Valdez is the host of the podcast This is America and former Trump National Diversity Advisor. Good to see everybody here. And Rich, and I'll start with you. What can we expect from this Biden-Putin meeting, in your opinion?
Well, to me, it looks like Biden's losing it. He's been punked by Putin. I think it's one blunder right after the next. He's showing, I'm going to say, a pretty high level of weakness, and I think it's not good for America. And listen, I'm rooting for Biden because he's our guy. Like it or not, he's our president. So my hope is that he can show a little bit more strength to kind of put Putin on notice and say, hey, look, maybe even borrow a page from Trump's playbook and kind of build Biden himself back better.
Yeah, we want to play the moment from the press conference yesterday. It started again about 2.5 hours late. But the president was asked about his meeting with Putin. Here's what he said.
I'm hoping that that President Putin concludes that there is some interest in terms of his own interests in changing the perception that the world has of him in terms of whether or not he will engage in behavior that's more consistent with what is considered to be appropriate behavior for head of state.
Kelly Hyman, what are your expectations for the meeting between the two leaders?
My expectation for the meeting between the two world leaders is to have a discussion about stuff that affects not only the U.S. and Russia, but also affects the world at large. We have to remember that we are one world, and I would disagree with the other panelists. I think Biden has a lot of experience with foreign policy over his 30 years in government, and I do believe that he understands Putin, has met with Putin before as vice president, and knows that he is a worthy opponent.
Rich Valdez, you care to respond?
Yeah, well, I think that's exactly what we're looking at. We're looking at Biden's 47 years in Washington, 36 in the Senate. These are 36 marked years of failure. If we look at things that happened, when did Crimea get annexed? It was under Biden's watch, under Obama. So I would hardly look to that as a straw or a feather in his cap for victory. Biden needs to step his game back. And like I said, he needs to build himself back better.
Let me ask Joe Collins this really quick to move on to this part, because one opinion writer calls the meeting between Biden and Putin perilous, recalling the disastrous meeting, as it's been written 60 years ago, between President Kennedy and Nikita Khrushchev, saying, quote, Khrushchev came away with an increased conviction that Kennedy was fundamentally weak and indecisive. It would be naive to conclude that Biden's far shorter meeting with Putin on Wednesday, even following the collapse of the Soviet Union and the Warsaw Pact military alliance, is without similar perils. If Khrushchev found Kennedy weak and indecisive, how will Putin find Biden? Joe?
Well, I'll tell you this. Look, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and over again. And you talk about Joe Biden, a guy who is sitting as a president of the United States, who has been in office for well over 47 years right now. And you got to think, he hasn't intimidated Russia. President Obama has never intimidated Russia while he was the vice president. And all he can do is tough talk. I mean, Joe Biden spent a number of months talking about Russia when it comes to election interference, to tapping into our power grid, and has not produced anything yet. And so now you have an opportunity to sit face to face with the person who you've been accusing for a very long time of doing all these mischievous things. Now it's time for the American public and the entire world to see how you react in person. We saw how he did throughout the debates with President Trump. Come on, shut up, man. It's going to be the same thing when he meets with Vladimir Putin, unfortunately.
Well, we know after the meeting, again, he will be having a solo press conference. Sometimes you would see the two world leaders holding the joint briefing together after the meeting. That's not going to be the case in this situation here, and we'll wait and see what reporters ask the president about what happened. We'll also wait and see from you guys, Joe Collins, Kelly Hyman, Rich Valdez. Stick around. We want to talk to you about another topic.
Yeah, more on Biden's European tour. It wasn't all about global issues. President Biden also had a lot to say about President Trump, his supporters, and the GOP. That next.